I want to play black-green Delve. We have pretty much the most straightforward Delve deck in the format, with 8 Delve payoff cards. Hooting Mandrills and Grammac Angler reward you for filling your graveyard, and then pretty much the maximum amount of enablers that you can run. We have Vessel of Nascency, which both finds our Delve cards and fills our graveyard. We have Grisly Salvage, which finds our Delve cards and fills our graveyard. Commune with the Gods, same thing. It finds our Delve spells and also fills our graveyard, and we can use it to get that weight into our hand. Well, that's the big upside of how this is constructed. And Satyr Wayfinder cannot hit our Delve cards, but it also fills our graveyard. And these all give us land cards, and this can also hit enchantments, which allows us to run dead weight in our 1-drop removal slot, so that when we use Vessel of Nascency or Commune with the Gods, we can also hit removal spells in addition to threats. And then Blastoderm is kind of a curve topper that is difficult to interact with. They basically have to jump block this multiple times to not just die to the 5 damage. Well, it's 15 damage in total. And Putrid Leech is just a very efficient beater for 2 mana. Werebear also very efficient when we constantly have Threshold, or at least we can try to have Threshold when attacking, and then Delve post combat to like let go of some of our graveyard, but we already got an attack in. Also, it just accelerates into Blastoderm, for example. And some Chainer's Edicts, because Flashback interacts very nicely with our ability to fill our graveyard. So pretty straightforward deck, pretty clean build. I was very pleasantly surprised with how well constructed all of this is, and how much sense all the deck building decisions made. And one thing to note is that I made some tiny changes to the deck list so that I'm 20 cards different than the original deck. So, because that allows my potential 5-0 list to get posted alongside the person who originally went 5-0 with it. So I switched all the basics for Snow Covered Basics, which is 12 different cards already for pretty much no strategical loss. Then they were running 4 Evolving Wilds, 1 Terramorphic. I'm running 4 Terramorphic, 1 Evolving Wild, which is also 3 extra cards for no strategic gain or loss at all. And then they had Nausea, they had Shrivelware, I now have Nausea, so that's an extra card being changed. And then I have some experimental cards here that I wanted to try out regardless. So they had a 4th Duress, and I'm not even certain what else. Definitely the 4th Duress and the 2nd Nausea, or Shrivel, and then like 2 more cards. But yeah, I decided to make those changes both because I wanted to try out how these cards play. Grim Harvest is another very nice way of creating card advantage and also abusing the fact that we're filling up our graveyard. And Rancid Earth also takes advantage of Threshold and offers us another kind of 1 damage effect to punish small creatures, just as the Nausea and Shrivel would, and also some land destruction against bounce land control decks or Tron. And Thorn of the Black Rose is just a nice anti-control card to give us some card advantage, and we can potentially recur it with the Grim Harvest. Then the cards that were already in the sideboard, Nihil Spellbomb, just a nice catch-all. Graveyard Hate card, though I'm not certain if you really need 2 Graveyard Hate cards with how few Graveyard decks are being played in the metagame at the moment. But yeah, it's just very efficient answer, for example, for a Tortured Existence deck, or something relying on Ghostly Flicker. Then Gnaw to the Bone is a very nice answer to burn decks, because we can also cast it from our graveyard, and we are filling our graveyard with creatures, so it punishes aggressive decks very nicely. Cartouche of Ambition, another target that we can hit off of our Vessel of Nascency and Commune with the Gods. That can help us stabilize against aggressive decks while also killing small creatures. So, for example, against Heroic or some Delver deck or something, we would be able to kill one of their creatures, make one of our big threats life linking, and then that improves our position in the race by quite a bit. Leaf Crown Droid, we see a recurring theme here of enchantments being used in the deck, so that we can hit them off of the various graveyard filling spells, and this can both be a blocker against the Delver Spellstutter based deck and also can turn one of our big creatures into a creature with reach by bestowing it. So pretty nice target against flyer oriented decks, also against Core Skyfisher, Glinthawk and such. If we are ever forced to play defense a little bit, then Leaf Crown Droid can be a great tool there, and also just a 2-for-1. Even if our creature gets bounced by a Vapor Snag or a Snap or something, we still end up with the 2-2 reach on the board that plays defense. And some duress just for any deck running counter magic, any combo deck where we want to take their Team or Battle Rage or Inside Out or something out of their hand. Just very flexible. So that's the deck, and I'm going to also be running it through a league. Where is it? There. There we go. Let's fire up the league. Decklist is now also available on the Stream Decker, so if you're watching the stream, you can click on that plugin or type !decklist in the chat, and then it will be displayed to you. Okay, once again, easy mulligan. And this has pretty much all we need. We have a curve with a creature or an enabler on turn 2, and then a fat delve creature on turn 3. And Blastoderm is not yet castable, and also not really what I want to be doing early on. It's kind of a finisher once my opponent has already taken a little bit of damage from Grimmick Angler, so I'll scry to the bottom. And well, neither of these snow lands are really known for any deck, so I'm not really hiding information by leading on snow-covered swamp or forest. That's the upside of running, for example, snow-covered mountains in your Boros deck, that people expect you to be Delver or blue-red control with Scrat. Jungle Hollow a turn too late to really be all that useful. Now I have to decide between enabling Grimmick Angler or just putting a Putrid Leech down. The most likely turn 1 swamp deck would be Mono Black Controller from my opponent, though they could still be a blue-black controlling deck, though those would prefer to lead on Island on turn 1 or a blue-black tapped land so that they can cast Counterspell in a timely manner. Mono Black can sometimes struggle to deal with Grimmick Angler, though I would prefer to run it out in a way where it's protected from Chainer's Edict, because that is their best entry to it, followed by Oubliette. So I think I'm actually leading on Putrid Leech, both because it can get some early damage in, and also because it protects me from Chainer's Edict, though potentially my opponent can Chainer's Edict on turn 2 here and then follow up with a 3-drop, so I might be playing into their hands by allowing them to curve a little bit better. That's the big downside of this. Oh, I see, there's the zombie deck, which was recently shown on, I think, Tolarian Community College, or maybe MTG Goldfish did a series on it. It was definitely highlighted somewhere. So it should rise in popularity in the leagues now that more people have seen it as a budget option. And it should be a pretty good matchup for me, I would say. Though with this being a zombie, makes my opponent's zombie-related tribal effects a little bit better. They have access to Shepherd of Rot, I think is the name of it, which hits both players for the number of zombies on the board in life loss. And then also they have the zombie cycling card that deals damage to your opponent, or makes them lose life to the number equal to the number of zombies on the board. So those are like your pseudo fireball effects for the aggressive zombie deck. and you have recursion in the form of Ghoul Colorless Chant. So do I want to trade 2 damage for 2 damage is the big question here. Because, like, I will deal 2 regardless. I think symmetrically lowering both of our life totals just plays into my opponent's hand, so I'm not going to. And then Satyr Wayfinder allows me to both fill the graveyard and have a blocker on the board. Blasted Drum and some creatures, more creatures. So Jungle Hollow or Terramorphic. Terramorphic gives me the extra 1 card in the graveyard, and in terms of mana availability I'll be fine regardless, I think. But I can fetch next turn if I need the card, and maybe double black or double green ends up mattering, so I'll just go the safe route and go Jungle Hollow. Kind of a minor decision here. The deck is not really all that color intensive unless you draw like multiple Putrid Leeches. Sacrifice creature. Okay, I was not even aware that this is in the deck, but it is another zombie that synergizes with trying to drain your opponent out. Okay, so I can go for the creature or enchantment or creature or land. And the upside of Grisly Savage is that it also takes cards that were not directly revealed to it. So I can... No, from among them, never mind. No, it's still... I was thinking of a different card. Yeah, I can still only take... Here I can take one of the 5 that is a creature or an enchantment, and here I can take one of the 5 that is a land or a creature. But I do already have the creature that I'm planning to cast. Though... I guess let's get our Putrid Leech attack going first before I show my opponent that I'm Gurmag Anglering them. Sure. Still a little bit away from fitting this dead weight into my turn. Though keeping their Carrion Feeder small would have been a nice thing to try for. But I think getting the Gurmag Angler onto the board was more important. So I think I'll go Commune because I already have the land that I need for the turn, so Grisly Salvage is not as much of a priority. So we hit a Chainer's Edict as like a bonus. They want Gurmag Angler or Mandrills. Probably want 1 Mandrills, 1 Angler to diversify the set of threats that I have available, and also the Trample might be helpful. So probably better to lead on Mandrills because it allows me to keep the zombie count on the board a little bit lower for now, and also Mandrills is the better attacker because it can't be jump blocked, while Gurmag Angler is slightly bigger, so it plays defense a little more effectively. Don't really have ways of getting any of these back, I think, with all the spells just taking the cards that they have actually revealed themselves. So it doesn't matter much what I delve away except for keeping Chainer's Edict around. Okay, sure. That can kill my Satyr Wayfinder if they want it to, while growing the Carrion Feeder. Okay, there's shrinking the Hooting Mandrills a little bit, which also makes sense. Gives me a little bit worse setup for counterplay. Okay, sure. Nameless Inversion is like a nice combination with the Ghoul Colorless Chant, because it allows you to play a removal spell that is also a zombie itself, because it's a shapeshifter or a changeling, so it has the creature type zombie, so you can return it with Ghoul Colorless Chant, which brings 2 zombie cards from your graveyard back to your hand. So you end up getting this and a creature, or maybe 2 Nameless Inversions if the matchup calls for it. I can jump block here on any of them, or let this through so my Satyr Wayfinder absorbs more damage in the future. Seems better to keep it around, I feel. Also protects me from Edict effect so that my Angler is not contested in any way. And maybe I will just put the dead weight onto the Carrion Feeder, even though that doesn't kill it. It shrinks it so it can't get an attack into my Angler through. I thought I was more interested in green mana, but it actually backfiring here. Now I wish I had 3 black sources and just 2 greens, so maybe I should have gotten Swamp with my Terramorphic. Can take Swamp here, that's probably the wisest thing to do, because it allows me to cast multiple spells this turn. So they have the Festering Ghoul to kill my Wayfinder potentially by sacrificing it here, and then also the Sultai Emissary, which can pump this. So I think I definitely want to shrink this a little bit, and then next turn I'll play my second Angler. So do I still want to be raising? They kill this. It's now a 1/1, so they can like maybe I want to hold this back so that they have like no profitable attacks. Pretty close. Yeah, that's probably alright for me. But yeah, I don't like my position here after the Ghoul Chorus Chant. I was very confident in my position before the Ghoul Chorus Chant, but that's, I guess, the payoff for being the all-zombie deck, that they can take advantage of that card really well. Okay, so those were the 2 cards we knew about. And they are flooding out. I think 5 lands is also not ideal for my opponent's deck. Nice, nice. Though I don't really want to put my Werebear onto the board when it's not a 4/4, because it's just nice to Festering Mummy at this point. Don't have great attacks, but sitting around also not that favorable in the matchup, because they have all these direct damage effects that they can draw into at some point. I'll probably just have to start slimming with these Anglers starting next turn. Okay, more Festering Mummies. Yeah, they have like great setups for jump blocking and then sacrificing the creature that they blocked with and getting some value out of that. Damn, I missed. My graveyard is full again, but I didn't get any value out of it. That's pretty bad for me. So like they could block with Festering Mummy, then kill my Wayfinder, and I have very little creatures left on defense. But yeah, I think I have to put the foot on the gas, start going more aggressive, because sitting around forever is going to lead to me getting flooded with an army of zombies here and eventually being drained out by their Shepherd of Rods and their like cycling card. Gempalm something. Okay, they're even using the life drain option rather than growing their Carrion Feeder again, which makes sense. The Carrion Feeder is pretty far away from being a profitable attacker, and keeping my life total low seems like a pretty nice way of getting me into burn range. Though yeah, now we did fight through 2 creatures, so okay, they want one Garmic Angler to be a really unprofitable attacker, and the second one is still full size. Now they might have Nameless Inversion still in their hand so that they can deal with this 3/3. That won't make sense for me, but it's not that big of an issue, because I get to keep a few sizable attackers still. Doomblade, okay. Well, that's one sizable attacker less, but still not really something that advances their game state. I'm still slightly ahead on the board, I would say, though they can still play defense for quite a while gaining a little bit of value out of all their blocks. That's an unfortunate draw, though it gets me closer to Trainer's Edict. Though it's interesting that they had 3 festering mummies and never took down the Satyr Wayfinder, so Satyr is going to get value blocking something big if that ever happens. So they kind of locked themselves out of making attacks into my board. I have to play this because it enables Trainer's Edict, though I'm unhappy showing my opponent that information. Yeah, I'm trying a bunch of random decks. Yeah, I've tried all in red. I'm trying, I think I didn't change my title yet of the stream, but I'm trying black-green Delve now. And then I wanted to try blue-red Delver after that, which is, I guess, the least unconventional of the deck choices, but I haven't played it much yet, and it's arguably the best deck in the format, or one of the best decks in the format, so. Okay, so another graveyard recursion effect. This one draws them a card if they get a zombie back, so it's kind of like a 2-for-1, but they get a random card instead of the second zombie. And Shepherd of Rot. Yeah, I will try black-red Tordex at some point. I'm not sure if it fits into my day-to-day, because I have already committed to at least 2 leagues, and then I guess with this 3rd league I still have some flexibility. But maybe I'll just do Tordex tomorrow or something. But yeah, this is symmetrical damage to both players, so it's still pretty scary for my opponent. Time to Trainer's Edict before another Sultai Emissary comes down. What is Trembling Goblin? Okay, so it's like a Festering Mummy, except worse, because it only gives -1/-1 and not a -1/-1 counter. It seems like they have some suboptimal zombie choices in their deck, and even though the recursive engine is pretty strong, they seem to be playing weaker cards than I remember this deck running. But yeah, the Tragic Slip top deck here is pretty huge blowout. We knew about one of the cards that they had in hand, so there was only one unknown, and that turned out to be Tragic Slip. That's pretty awful for me. So if I block, they can pump it and shrink my creature, then I have a 3/3 against their 3/3, and they have to sacrifice this as well, then they have a 4/4 against my 3/3, so I end up trading for these 2, and they are left with a 3/3, with a 4/4. It's not optimal for me to do that, but I'm getting a lot of stuff off of their board. If I double block, then I end up trading. Probably the double block is just good for me. And then if they have another removal spell in hand, I'm super screwed, but yeah. They can only turn it into 4/4 while reducing my power and toughness by 1, so I have 5/5 in front of their 4/4, and then after this effect happens I have 4/4 in front of their 4/4, so it ends up just trading. And I don't want to be trading damage with this on the board, though. Okay. But yeah, if they have any more to make this more profitable for them, any removal spell, I'm in a pretty tough position. Okay. They can also just let this trade happen. I guess that's better for them if both of us have a 1/1, but their 1/1 has a relevant ability and mine doesn't. Really need a creature here. Well, should have been more precise. I really need a Delve creature here or Blastoderm. I'll get some chip damage in, but yeah, this symmetrical burn is going to be scary. Trainer's Edict would be great for me. Any of the big creatures would be great for me. My opponent also seems to be flooding out, so there's still some hope. But yeah, this is kind of both of our decks on their last legs, struggling to close out the game with some pretty embarrassing late game draws after quite the eventful and grindy mid game. Yeah, they decide not to use this ability because lowering both of our life totals isn't really that advantageous to them at this point. Well, I'm not that close to decking myself yet, but missed there as well. Well, no, oh, I guess I got punished. Damn, I should have played one of these lands. I was like, there's no reason for me to play any of these, right? Because I don't have enough ways of spending mana in a single turn. But yeah, if I had played one of the two lands, I could have flashed back Trainer's Edict. So I guess the point to which you have to play out lands with an empty hand is to 9 mana. And I failed to do that. Yeah, goat boys are definitely running the show here. Though they will have you know that they are satyrs and not goats, and that they think that's disrespectful. But yeah, obviously, I agree that we can just call them goats. But these satyrs are pretty sensitive when it comes to that. Okay, so 2 turn clock. They need to come up with a removal spell or a blocker here. Sure. Well, now it's just 3 turn clock, and they still have to deal with my random 1/1s. And I'm not even sure how many good cards I have left in my deck. Let me see. I guess we have to look at the exile as well. So all my Trainer's Edicts are gone. 1, 2, 3, 4 Gurmik English are gone. 1, 2. So I have 3. So I have 1 Hooting Vendors left and 2 Blastoderms. So 2 Blastoderms, 1 Hooting Vendors left in my deck. And 2 Deadweights. 0 Werewere. 1, 2, 3, 1 Putrid Leech. So still some beef left over, though Ghoul Razor is pretty bad for me. Unapologetic racism towards satyrs. Not sure if I can support that. Why would you ever get this one back? Isn't this like strictly worse than the other one? Like, why would you put it into your deck to begin with, and why would you get it back when it's worse than the alternatives? Well, that's a good draw. So now do I want to attack with both? Probably not. Well, like, they can just block here and go to 3. That's probably not worth it. My idea was that if they ever make the mistake of blocking with Trembling Goblin, I reduce the number of jump blockers they have for my Blastoderm. And that could be great for me, because it potentially buys me a turn earlier of having the threat of killing them. But yeah, they still have to jump block this 3 times. And then I still have follow-up threats that might win the game. Yeah, there we go. Finally, my big creatures are showing up to the party. Though if they find a second Ghoul Razor or something, still in huge amounts of trouble, because they can loop those back. Oh no, it gets a random creature. Yeah. It's not just strictly better. Gravedigger. So yeah, it makes sense that they just randomly got the bad zombie over a better zombie, and the second Ghoul Razor isn't even necessarily a lock. But yeah, they do need a blocker here. Reading cards explains the cards, you know. Come on, Blastoderm army, get their 8th land. So both of us flooded out pretty badly, but yeah, we traded so many resources in the mid game. That was quite the intense game 1. That weight should help close this out. I'm not even certain how they would stay alive. I guess they have to go like Cycler into Cycler into Cycler and deal 6 damage to me somehow. Because this one can't block. So even without the dead weight, they were not alive anymore. Now I think they're on a 0 order. Okay. Well, if they had a Cycler in hand, they should have just done that in response to my dead weight to have the chance of potentially getting super lucky and dealing 6 to me. I think if we set up our deck well enough for the grindy game, then I can board in Gnaw to the Bone as well. Like, it has the potential of making me fall behind in the control game. But I think Nihil Spellbomb for their recursive elements and Gnaw to the Bone for their burnout elements, and then my higher card quality should just carry me to victory. and then like Grim Harvest so that I can actually win the grindy game. Probably, like this seems like a good plan, then I'm out controlling my opponent. And Cartouche of Ambition seems decent for that plan, but it does open me up to getting 2 for 1. I think with that setup I just board out Blastoderms, because I'm trying to be the control role in the matchup. And maybe like a chain, maybe both Trainer's Edicts, because I will be hitting like random Sultai Emissaries and Festering Mummies that are not actually valuable to kill. And this aids the control plan. So now I'm like a black-green mid-range deck going over the top of what my opponent's doing, disrupting their card advantage and disrupting their alternative win condition, and then creating my own card advantage. All of that seems pretty synergistic. Sure. Though I now have trouble killing like a single big creature if a Carrion Feeder ever gets out of control or something. But even with Trainer's Edict, that's still difficult to reach that Carrion Feeder. They will most likely have a supporting cast of other zombies around them. Okay, hand looks pretty decent. Have some enablers, have all my colors. That's F6, so I just fetch main phase for convenience. Though Carrion Feeder turn 1, that's like their closest card to being a real card. So that's definitely the most scary thing they can present me with. Threatens to get out of control pretty quickly. Yeah, Tortured Existence Fairy Macabre is definitely pretty strong in the graveyard mirror matchups. The risk of having Grim Harvest as your late game engine is that it can sometimes get picked off in the early game. If I accidentally dump it into my graveyard with the Satyr Wayfinder or Commune, then if they kill my creature, I don't have the resources available to me to pay for recover, and then it gets exiled forever, but still I'm losing out on potential value, but not actually losing a card, because it was kind of free to me in the first place. So I'm not too afraid of it happening. Though their Shepherd is pretty annoying once again. Hooting Mandrills opens me up to Doomblade, and Angler plays around that, but Angler also adds to the zombie count, so definitely some downside to that as well. And also eats up more of my graveyard right away, which gets me further away from Werebear being any useful. Okay, I think I'll actually value my graveyard highly and not only play Hooting Mandrills, but also choose to play my untapped land over my Jungle Hollow so that I have a faster rebuild towards Garmac Angler, because I'm keeping 1 extra card in my graveyard. So that makes it possible for me to go like Commune into Angler next turn, potentially, depending on how many of my creatures I end up killing. So 4 damage to both of us. Seems like they're pretty confident in their ability to kill Hooting Mandrills, so I guess this is like a nameless inversion follow-up. Yeah. It is pretty scary, though maybe my Angler gets to stick around then, because that confirms the fact that they don't have Doomblade in their hand currently. Otherwise I think they would have sequenced that the opposite way. Okay, take that damage. Really still looking for that gnaw to the bone, so all of this burn out nonsense is no longer an issue. Putrid Leech or Vessel of Nascency. Vessel allows me to keep chaining, and I have 7 cards in my graveyard regardless of what I do, so I can like follow up with Werebear, which is a 4/4 and doesn't add to the zombie count, so I think I'll take Vessel because it allows me to find my Gnaw to the Bones and Grim Harvest, and also makes it so that I can keep a huge graveyard for the Gnaw to the Bone to be very impactful, and then afterwards I start eating up the graveyard again with my zombie fishes. Okay, so this is random zombie creature or random zombie card? Random zombie card. Okay, so they can even get the nameless inversion. That's pretty annoying for me. Okay, that can kill their shepherd. Potentially. Let's crack it though and see what I get. Once again, I'm exposing my one second. There we go. I'm exposing my Grim Harvest potentially by tapping so low, but I'm also under a lot of pressure on my life totals, so I think I'm fine with that. So Werebear or Hooting Mandrills. Hooting Mandrills has the ability to trample over, but it does eat up my graveyard resources instead of letting me keep some. I think Werebear is the better pick here, because it allows me to use my graveyard resources on all these anglers and still play a beefy creature onto the board. Though casting all of the anglers is going to put quite the strain on my threshold. But yeah, I can start casting these for like 4 or 5 if I don't have much else to do with my turn. Probably still end up having to kill the shepherd. Not great, but better than just getting burned out by it, because currently I am behind in the race. But this carrion feeder is also going to be quite the problem. Yeah, I think if I ever find my Gnaw to the Bone, it's pretty much GG. Because then my bigger creatures take over the game, and I get to gain, like, what is it? 8 at the moment, but then the flashback might be even bigger, because, like, Satyr, Wayfinder, and Werebear are going to be dying in the near future. So maybe like 10 or 12 life being gained, and then I can flash it back for the same amount. So I gain like upwards of 24 life. So they can make this a 5/5. They would have to throw both of their other creatures away. If I block, they make it a 5/5. I just lose my Werebear, but they lose both of these. If I double block, they would have to also... I think double blocking seems pretty decent for me. So that they have to nameless inversion my Satyr Wayfinder in addition to sacking their board, or just make like an unfavorable trade against the Werebear. Because once the carrion feeder is off of the board, I also feel favorable about my position. Is this Tragic Step follow-up? That also seems fine to me. What? Oh, that's just a nameless inversion and trade for both. I'm also very happy about that. We got the biggest threat off of my opponent's board and got a nameless inversion out of their hand. I think they misplayed that. Though I guess going all in on making this a 5/5 makes my opponent very vulnerable to Chainer's Edict, because then they're left with a single 5/5 carrion feeder. But that would have been much more impactful than having like a 1/2, 1/3 and a 2/2 against my bigger board. Excuse me. So yeah, now they're in a board position where they can not really block and not really attack, so if they have a single 5/5 carrion feeder that can also grow by sacrificing any of their follow-up creatures, that leaves them in a much better spot. So I think I would have preferred for them to nameless inversion the Satyr, make this into a 5/5, and then my Werebear ends up losing out in combat. They got the nameless inversion back to their hand once again with these Ghoul Razors. Okay, there we go. Now racing is a lot better for me. So I think I'm willing to just make some slightly disadvantageous attacks. Ghoul Razors being returned to their hand and then once again returning more stuff. That is pretty scary. But yeah, I think I just want to go as aggressive as possible here, like trade some of these off. Gnaw to the bone with a full graveyard, then go Angler, and close out the game while my opponent's still dirtling around. So I think I'll leave them with a Ghoul Razor, because that's the card that I am less interested in them returning from the graveyard. So I'm at 22. Now their symmetric damage effects are pretty bad. But yeah, I think I'm willing to give up some of my graveyard to get both of the Anglers onto the board. That's kind of the point of this deck, right? Even though the flashback of Gnaw to the Bone is now much worse, if I'm exiling all of these creatures, like my opponent will have trouble catching up on the board, facing down 2 5/5s, though I guess this is no longer a 4/4 then. So there's some argument to only playing a single Angler because it's a similar amount of power on the board. Now I have 11 instead of 9 with these two. Not sure. But this can be upgraded once again if I draw one of the self-mill cards. So then I would have 14 instead of 9. And even if I end up not upgrading the Werebear, my 2 5/5s are more difficult to deal with in combat. That's pretty decent. Probably want to... well, no. It's pretty interesting. I can just make the attack, let my opponent block, and then post-combat Nihil's Bowman. That makes the effect of the Nihil's Bowman a lot better. And also leaves them in the dark about it being in my hand. Or I just crack it pre-combat and then I don't get rid of all of their zombies, but I can potentially draw into a Graveyard Enabler. So that would allow my Werebear to attack. So there's some upside to both lines. I think I'll make the play that ends up giving them a lot of dead cards in their deck, like the Ghoul Color's Trance and Cemetery, whatever the card is called, Reap or something, and the Ghoul Razors all end up being dead, but I might be missing some damage here. If I had found a way to fill my graveyard, then the Werebear could have been attacking and now wasn't. Yeah, this turned out pretty nicely for me. No more graveyard shenanigans for my opponent. I have a dominating board position. Sign in blood, yeah. You got it. So I think I like the way that I sideboarded, though the Grim Harvest never got to shine. I'll be right back.